For the past 3 months, I've quietly done something I once thought I'd never be able to do. I completely reorganized my living space, following an ancient Japanese philosophy called Wabi-Sabi. And strangely enough, it felt like someone pressed the reset button on my mind. I didn't just have fewer things, I had fewer worries. I didn't just tidy my home, I learned how to breathe. From someone who always felt cramped, heavy-headed, and restless inside, I began to live slower, deeper, and with more gentleness toward myself. What surprised me most? The journey didn't start with letting go. It started with looking back, with gratitude, at what was already here. Wabi-Sabi minimalism isn't a decor style, nor is it a life of deprivation. It's how the Japanese find beauty in what's imperfect, impermanent, and unpretentious, yet deeply real. Through that, they create living spaces that feel light, subtle, and warm enough for the mind to rest. If lately your home feels crowded, your heart feels tired, and you're not even sure what's weighing you down, stay with this video for a moment. I'm about to share with you the Japanese methods of decluttering that changed not just my room, but the way I live. And I believe that once you finish listening, you'll never look at your living space the same way again. 1. What is Wabi-Sabi minimalism really? I used to live in a small apartment, fully equipped with shiny wooden floors and perfectly aligned bookshelves. Everything looked like a magazine version of minimalism. But I still felt tired. Every time I came home from work, even though nothing was messy, I felt cramped inside. The room was clean, but my mind was cluttered. Until one day, I started tidying my home in a completely different way. It wasn't about throwing things away or arranging them for aesthetics. I simply placed my hand on each item, looked closely at the scratch on the old ceramic cup my mother gave me, gently touched the slightly frayed tablecloth I brought back from Kyoto. I wasn't cleaning to make things empty. I was cleaning to connect. That was the first time I truly felt wabi-sabi, a very quiet kind of beauty. The Japanese say wabi is the beauty of simplicity and stillness within nature. Sabi is the beauty of time, when things grow worn yet remain full of value. Together, wabi-sabi becomes a way of being, finding peace in what is imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. Unlike Western minimalism, which can sometimes feel cold, like walking into a showroom, wabi-sabi doesn't ask you to get rid of everything. It invites you to stay, to slow down, and to listen to the stories each object carries. Even a crack in a teacup can be the place where memory seeps through. And interestingly, science supports this too. A study from the University of Tokyo found that people living in spaces inspired by wabi-sabi reported 47% lower stress levels than those in environments that were either cluttered or overly perfect. Wabi-sabi minimalism isn't about less stuff, it's about less noise. Less visual noise, less emotional noise, and fewer false expectations. So that when you sit down, surrounded by a room that bears the marks of time, your heart still feels spacious enough to take a deep, peaceful breath. And you'll want to hear what comes next, where the Japanese teach us how to let go of the too much without losing what is enough. 2. The Japanese art of intentional imperfection. Do you know when I truly escaped the trap of perfectionism? It was the moment I almost threw away a ceramic cup just because it had a tiny chip on its handle, just a small one. But instantly that familiar voice in my head said, "It's not beautiful anymore. Toss it." Luckily, I stopped right there, and I remembered the question the Japanese often ask themselves when tidying up. Not, "Is this item still new?" but, "Does this item tell an honest story of life?" I picked up the cup. Looking at that little chip, I remembered the sleepy mornings when I poured tea, the times my hand was a bit clumsy, placing it down on the wooden table. Every scratch was a fragment of memory, and suddenly, I felt tenderness toward it. The cup wasn't perfect, but it was deeply real. That's what wabi-sabi is. It doesn't chase the new or the flawless. It honors the traces of time. The philosophy of mono no aware, the awareness of impermanence, is its foundation. The Japanese don't hide cracks, they fill them with gold. Kintsugi doesn't repair things to make them the same again. It turns brokenness into art, to remind us that imperfections can be beautiful, in a gentle and profound way. A study from Kyoto University found that those who live surrounded by aged objects, rather than chasing perfection, recover emotionally more easily when facing difficulties. The living space becomes a teacher, It teaches you to be more forgiving with yourself. That a little scratch, a little disappointment, is sometimes an essential part of growing up. And strangely, since the day I accepted that wobbly-legged table, I've also become less harsh with myself. I no longer panic at every mark on the wood. I just look at it and think, that's simply the table's personality. But hold on, Wabi-Sabi isn't about keeping everything old. So how do we tell the difference between meaningful imperfection and what just weighs the space down? In the next part, we'll step into the Japanese 3-layer decluttering method, where every decision to keep or let go begins from within. 3. The 3-layer decluttering method. I once tried the get-it-all-done-in-one-day way of cleaning. By the end of the day, I was sitting in the middle of a pile of stuff, my head buzzing, my heart racing, not from emotion, but from overwhelm. Every item held a memory, and every decision came with hesitation. I couldn't breathe, and the very process meant to help me breathe better, until I learned a different approach from the Japanese, gentler, more practical, and more mindful. They call it the 3-layer method. It doesn't ask you to throw everything away in a single day. There's no force, no rush, just 3 layers of filtering. The deeper you go, the closer you get to what truly matters. The first layer is the obvious things. Broken items, expired goods, things you forgot you even owned. Hideko Yamashita, the author of Dan Shari, calls this Dan, refusing what's unnecessary and removing what doesn't belong. I let go of nearly 30% of my belongings just in this step. Light, effortless, no regret. The second layer touches the maybe I'll need it someday items. You have those too, right? The blender you haven't used in 3 years, the lipstick you bought because it looked good online but never matched your skin. The Japanese would ask, has this item truly lived with me in the past year? If not, maybe it's only taking up space. And taking up your mental space too. The final layer is where Wabi-Sabi truly speaks. Here, you don't keep something for convenience, nor discard it for imperfection. You keep what serves a purpose and makes you feel at ease. A rustic ceramic bowl, a blanket that smells of sunlight, a wooden spoon darkened by time. Imperfect things, but they make you feel enough. Research from Japan's Institute of Behavioral Science shows that people who follow the 3-layer method are 70% more likely to maintain a tidy home than those who do a single, intense cleanup. Maybe because they don't tidy for appearances, but to listen to the genuine connection between themselves and the things they live with. Can you feel that too? If what I've shared resonates with you, please hit like, so I'll know I'm heading in the right direction. And if you'd like to keep walking this path of slower, more mindful living, don't forget to subscribe. In the next part, we'll see how, when your space transforms, your mind begins to soften too. 4. How space affects your inner peace. I used to think that cleaning everything up was enough. But some mornings, even when my home was neat, I still felt tired. Everything was in place, yet there was no place for my mind to rest. The house looked fine, but I wasn't. Then I came across a concept in Japanese culture, kanso, simplicity, and the elimination of clutter. That's when I understood. The outer space is a mirror reflecting the inner mind. Neuroscientists at Tokyo Medical University measured brainwave differences in people living in Wabi-Sabi-inspired spaces. When the eyes no longer have to process too many stimuli, the brain conserves energy, saving it for creativity, problem-solving, and presence. That feeling of the mind falling into place is real. But what moved me even more was the concept of intentional emptiness. In traditional Japanese homes, not every surface needs to be used. They leave empty spaces, not out of lack, but to let each object breathe. And when space can breathe, so can the human mind. I started trying it myself. I didn't fill every kitchen shelf. I left one small section empty. Between 2 paintings, I left a white gap. On my desk, I kept only 3 things I truly needed. After 2 weeks, my mornings no longer felt rushed. Brushing my hair, pouring water, wiping the table, suddenly became a gentle sequence of actions, each with its own rhythm. It felt as if the space itself was guiding me to slow down. And funny enough, cleaning also became faster. With fewer things, there's less to bump into. I no longer hit my shin on the table every time I got up for water at night. Who would have thought? Minimalism could also be a nighttime navigation system. When space is simplified, seijaku, tranquility, no longer has to be sought. It simply appears naturally, softly. like the sound of wind passing through a room that has just enough. And if you're curious what that kind of room looks like, in the next part, we'll step into every small corner of a Wabi-Sabi home, not to learn how to decorate, but to learn how to live from the simplest things. 5. The Wabi-Sabi home room by room. I used to think Wabi-Sabi minimalism was just a decor style, until the day I stepped into the kitchen of an elderly Japanese woman in the outskirts of Kyoto. Nothing was luxurious, yet I didn't want to leave. Every item had a reason to stay. A worn wooden spoon, a cracked ceramic bowl mended with gold. The little kitchen seemed to whisper, "I am used and alive every single day." When I got home, I looked at my own kitchen, complete, tidy, but empty, and I began to change. I kept the cup I use every day, even though its handle was chipped. I put away the 3 plastic cutting boards and kept only one thick wooden one, darkened by years of slicing vegetables. Suddenly the kitchen could breathe. Each time I cooked, I felt more present. The living room was different. It used to be where I displayed things that were beautiful but untouched. But then I realized Wabi-Sabi doesn't care about beauty on display. It cares about signs of life. The coffee table stained by tea, the sagging corner of a chair where someone often sits to read. Those things don't make the room look worse. They make it feel like home. In the bedroom, I replaced the crisp white sheets with linen, naturally wrinkled, soft. Japanese-style minimalism doesn't demand perfection. It asks that you truly rest. A study from the Japan Sleep Institute found that rooms using natural materials, with minimal visual noise and the presence of gentle imperfections, lead to noticeably deeper sleep. Even the bathroom doesn't need much. Just a few things you truly use: a good towel, a clean glass jar, a small moisture-loving plant. Each morning, that place isn't just where you wash your face. It's where you return to yourself. What I love about this way of living is that it doesn't try to be perfect. Every corner of the home, every object, simply fulfills its own purpose. And because of that, you too get to live more lightly. But there's one thing people rarely talk about. Why do we keep holding on to things we no longer need? The answer lies deep within our psychology. And that's exactly where we're headed next. 6. The psychology behind Japanese decluttering. I used to think decluttering was just about rearranging things. But one day, after a long cleaning session, I realized I wasn't just tidying my room. I was tidying my mind. What I was letting go of wasn't just material stuff, but also attachment, fear of lack, and the habit of filling inner emptiness with outer possessions. The Japanese have understood this for a long time. In their psychology, there's a concept called koko, finding richness in simplicity. When you own fewer things, but each one holds meaning, you don't lose anything. On the contrary, you begin to feel enough. Not because you have less, but because you're more grateful. A study from Waseda University found that after 6 months of living with Wabi-Sabi minimalism, 68% of participants improved their focus, 52% slept better, and nearly 80% felt deeper gratitude for what they had. It sounds simple, but it's really a process of psychological reprogramming. When your mind is no longer pulled by hundreds of small desires, it returns to its natural calm. And this is what changed my view of minimalism. The Japanese don't see it as deprivation, but as intentional abundance. When you no longer waste energy organizing, cleaning, choosing, or worrying about things, you gain time for what truly matters: a conversation, a quiet morning, or a sudden spark of inspiration. Psychologists call this the ability to resist decision fatigue. When your space is simplified, your brain no longer has to process hundreds of tiny choices each day: what to wear, where to put something, which item to use. And honestly, I've lost my house keys far less often since then. I'm pretty sure I spent half my life just looking for things I already owned. When your mind is no longer stretched thin by material clutter, it finally has room for bigger questions. How do I truly want to live? What was I born to do? The Japanese call that journey ikigai, the reason you wake up every morning, and that's exactly where we'll go next. 7. Creating your personal Wabi-Sabi practice. I know what you're thinking. Sounds nice, but where do I start? That was the same question I once asked myself, standing in a house full of things and a mind full of confusion. I didn't need a revolution, I just needed one small step. And I chose to begin with observation. For the first 2 weeks, I didn't clean anything. I simply noticed, what do I touch every day? Which shelf makes me sigh when I look at it? Which corner feels light every time I walk by? The Japanese practice mindfulness through this very act, observing without judging. You can't change what you haven't truly seen clearly. Then, in the 3rd week, I started tidying, but only for 15 minutes a day. 1 drawer, 1 cabinet. I used the 3-layer method again, little by little, no rush. Because according to the Kaizen philosophy, lasting change doesn't come from intense effort, but from steady improvement. By the 4th week, I moved on to selection. Not choosing what to discard, but choosing what to keep. I kept the slightly worn sweater that makes me feel at ease. I replaced all the plastic hangers with a row of warm wooden ones. Every morning, choosing clothes became a small ritual, no longer a chore. Then I adopted the habit of osoji, a light evening cleanup. Just 10 minutes, putting things back where they belong, wiping the table, folding the towel. But the magic was this. I wasn't doing chores. I was thanking the space that had supported me all day. A survey by Japan's Health Institute found that those who see minimalism as a spiritual practice, not just an organizing technique, report up to 85% higher satisfaction with their lifestyle. They don't maintain a beautiful house. They maintain a life that feels enough. And that is the spirit of Wabi-Sabi. Not seeking perfection, but creating a space calm enough for you to return to. A space that listens to you and holds room for the best part of you to live. So, you've come with me through this journey of Wabi-Sabi minimalism, a way of living that doesn't just help us own less, but helps us create more space to live deeply, fully, and truthfully. The Japanese have long understood that our outer space shapes our inner world. When we choose intentionally, and when we learn to embrace the beauty of what's unfinished, the place we live in becomes a place that heals us. What I love most about Wabi-Sabi isn't in how the house looks. It's that it never asks you to change fast or live like someone else. It begins right where you are, with what you already have. Just one small step, one small corner, one object you truly cherish. Now, I want to hear from you. What resonated with you the most? Was it the idea that cracks can also be beautiful, or the 3-layer decluttering method? Leave a comment and tell me where you'd like to begin. And if there's a room in your home that feels overwhelming, share it. I'd love to make a video just for you. If this video gave you a new way to see minimalism, a gentler, deeper, more human kind of minimalism, please hit like and subscribe to continue this journey with me. Turn on the notification bell, because next week, I'll share how I transformed my small home into a peaceful sanctuary that doubled in emotional value. And don't forget, home should never be the place that drains you, but the place you return to and feel lighter. Start small, be patient, and trust that beauty is always there, even in its most imperfect form.